Thank you very much. I'm honoured to be asked to speak by Laura, who I'm a huge admirer of. I have a big speech. I'm not going to read it out, but I suppose I want to start with a little bit of history. And the NUI panel has only ever nominated 2 women senators since its first election in 1938. These were Helena Concannon, who was elected in the first election in 1938, who held that seat until her death in 1952, and Gemma Hussey, elected in 1977 and held that seat until she was elected to the Dáil in 1982. So remarkably then, there has been no woman senator on the NUI panel for 35 years. This is in a time when the proportion of women entering full-time education has risen threefold, and women comprise a majority of graduates of the NUI institutions. And I suppose following on from the general election 2 weeks ago, where 22% or 35 TDs of those elected were female, I think the time is ripe to elect, for the NUI panel to elect a woman senator or women senators, as might be the case. And I'm going to give a little bit of background into these 2 remarkable women before I get on to why I want to support this remarkable woman, Laura. They were elected to the Senate a quarter of a century apart, but both Helena Concannon and Gemma Hussey used that mandate that they received from NUI graduates to work towards the plight and the equality of women. And I suppose it seems timely to look at those legacies this morning. Helena was a National University of Ireland representative in the Dáil before those non-geographical constituencies were abolished in 1937. She was a remarkable woman. She was a historian, she was a scholar, she was author of more books than I can name, most of which were on Irish women and the lives of Irish women. And what was particularly remarkable about Helena was that she was the only woman TD elected in the 1930s that did not have any familial connections to dead nationalist heroes. So she was very much there in her own steam. In 1938, she became a member of the First Senate, as I said, and she held that position until she died at the age of 74. If you search for Helena's contributions on the Oireachtas webpage, you'll see that she was a highly committed and dedicated politician. She was a woman of her time. I'm not so sure would I describe her a feminist, or would she herself have described herself as a feminist, but she brought a liberal Christian view into her work, into the welfare of mothers and children, and she was particularly concerned with the lives of women graduates and students, particularly teachers, and argued for equal pay, which was quite a radical idea back at the time. And as I say, she was quite concerned with mothers and maternity care and would have been ahead of her peers in that regard. You fast forward a quarter of a century later to Gemma Hussey. She was best known as a Fine Gael minister and TD, but actually what is less well known is that she started out her political career as an independent senator in 1977, again on the NUI panel. She had a strong background in women's politics and the second wave feminist movement. She was a founding chair of the Women's Political Association in 1973, and she was also a member of the Council for the Status of Women. And as a senator, I mean, she had many contributions in her political career, but as a senator, Gemma attempted in 1979 to introduce legislation to deal with rape. That bill lapsed at first stage, but she described to Susan McKay, the journalist, a few years ago her time, or that day in the Senate, and just how difficult it was for her to do, and I quote, "I was terrified out of my wits. I was going to have to stand up in the Oireachtas and use words like penis and penetration and vagina, I swear. In those days, women just didn't talk about those things. You were regarded with terrible suspicion. You were up against someone and shock each time you encountered it." Hussey was up against a former Minister for Justice who accused her of emotionalism and said it was necessary in a rape trial for defence lawyers to attack a complainant over her sexual history since, I quote, "if she was promiscuous, it was relevant." Another male senator said that many women upset the biological balance of a woman if they claimed that they were raped. But Gemma kept fighting on this issue, and eventually legislation was introduced, and only in 1990 was marital rape criminalised. But the rights and roles of women have improved quite dramatically since the 1970s, and that is in part thanks to feminist senators like Gemma Hussey, but also other university senators like Mary Henry, Mary Robinson, and Catherine McGuinness, who in a highly conservative Ireland used their position within Leinster House and outside of it to advance the cause of women's equality. And that was sometimes at great personal and political cost. And Mary Robinson's memoir is actually well worth reading on that. But the goal of full equality remains in Ireland a work in progress, and we need more gender equality champions and wider equality champions in both houses of the Oireachtas. For poorer women, traveller women, ethnic minority women, disabled women and LGBTQ women, amongst others, the difficulties of full citizenship and participation are particularly immense. And there is no doubt, I don't think anyone here would disagree, that the Seanad is in need of root and branch reform. It needs to be empowered, it needs to be enfranchised to all citizens. But even with its restrictions in the past, senators like those I've mentioned and many others, women and men, have used that position to work towards fairness, equality and justice in the law. And many of them have gone on to hold other roles and have taken that vital experience with them, including presidents, cabinet ministers and positions in the judiciary. So as a lifelong advocate of equality and with vast experience of campaigning and working with civic society organisations, including her hugely successful leadership of Students for Marriage Equality campaign, Laura is an ideal candidate to take the mantle from Helena Concannon and Gemma Hussey and to become the third woman senator on the NUI constituency. Equality lies at the heart of her campaign, and that is why I support Laura for the NUI, an independent senator for a modern Ireland. Thank you.